Welcome to the Lawless Astrology channel. My name's Dabney, and I'm an evolutionary astrologer. Today, I'm excited to have on Kay Taylor, who is a legendary astrologer and who is the president of the Organization of Professional Astrologers. She has been supportive of so many astrologers over the years, and she has a very big following in her own community. And she just launched a Substack. So, Kay, do you want to tell us what's you have a YouTube channel, but you just launched a Substack. Do you want to tell us the name of your new Substack?
Yeah, my name is Soul Path Notes. The book that I published in 2016 was called Soul Path Way. So there's a way that the soul path is the integrating aspect of all of the things that I do, whether it's the astrology or my intuitive work or healing, psychosynthesis. For me, the most important thing in life is we figure out what this soul path is, we get on it, and we do what we're here to do. So everything that I talk about always comes back to that flavor. So
I
yeah, I'm
love
really
it.
excited about Soul Path. I love to write, and this seems like a great place that people are interested in reading and knowing what's going on in the world.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I just did a video. My most recent video was entitled Are you an outsider? And like, or do you feel like you don't belong? And it was basically like my cry to say, like, if you're an outsider, this might be your time because we have got all of these energies that are kind of changing over that are going to kind of catch the rest of the world up with maybe some of the people that have been visionaries, with all of this Pluto and Aquarius and things moving into Aries and Uranus moving into Gemini. And so I guess, I invited you on because I believe you're somebody who's a little bit ahead of your time. You have kind of been on the forefront of some of the things that other people have been catching up with, such as, I know you've had communities, you've had an astrological community for a lot longer than, most of us that are kind of just catching on to that right now. And so I think community is one of the most important things that we keep hearing it over and over again. As Pluto went into Aquarius, it was almost like overnight, like everybody, and I'm not just talking about astrologers, I'm talking about everybody, like political commentators and like financial like pundits, like people just started talking more about like the loneliness epidemic and community. And so, being the president of OPA, how can you talk a little bit about how that fosters community? And if there are people out there that are astrologers or really astrologically inclined, like what is it about OPA that kind of brings that sort of more family, community feeling together?
Wow. That's a huge question with 5 or 6 subplots, Dabney.
Okay.
First, I'm going to say when you talk about being an outsider, that is so totally my experience. It almost brings tears to my eyes. And I remember years ago in a Steven Forrest apprenticeship gathering, which I know you apprenticed with him also. I had, he used to pull names out of the hat and read people's charts. And I was so wanting my chart read. And weekend after weekend after weekend, I wasn't pulled. And then one day at the very end, he said, okay, I'm going to go through Uranus, the planet, or all of the planets at the south node and what that means. And he said, as he got to Uranus, which is what I have, Uranus in Cancer at the south node in the fourth house of home and family, he talked about the fact that you come in and you are an outsider and you don't fit, and the loneliness and the sense of either being an outcast and rejected or taking off and leaving is so strong that you live with this essential aloneness. Now, I have Uranus there, it's on the angles in the fourth house, and Uranus aspects every single planet and angle in my chart. So even though I don't have any planets in Aquarius, I have been a true Aquarian since the time I was young. And yeah, didn't fit in and got rejected and never could find my community. To some extent, the astrology world is my community. Of course, I can say that and see that and feel that. But if you have strong Aquarius in your chart or a strong Uranus signature, you do feel outside and you are a visionary and you have this capability of being a change maker, revolutionary even. You're thinking in a whole different way than the traditional culture around you. And it ties in totally to Pluto coming into Aquarius, which it edged in 2023, but is here now and just went retrograde. So we're getting to review everything that's been happening in our world since October. OPA was always meant to be, not just the organization for professional astrologers, it's actually the organization for professional astrology. And what that is this place where we want to support high level quality, uh, excellence in astrology, but it's for everybody. It's for people who are just stepping their toes in. It's definitely for senior students and professional astrologers to learn and connect. That's like our little subtext now, learn and connect. And the connection part was part of OPA's original mandate, the first incorporation chart of OPA. OPA had a south node in Capricorn conjunct the ascendant and north node in Cancer in the seventh house. And it's like, okay, we're professional. We are organized and structured, and we're going to make sure you do everything right and good. But we would love to be Cancerian. We would love to connect and be family and develop relationship with each other, right? And then in 2022, realizing that we had some limitations by being incorporated as a membership organization, according to the IRS, and not a total nonprofit that can get fundraising and the scholarship program and everything in a really good way. And so I reincorporated OPA in 2022 and incorporated it on the 5th of May so that we had Sun conjunct Uranus in the North Node in the 9th house and Cancer Moon in the 11th house. And
I love
the South Node, the core of us, Scorpio in the 3rd house is, we're coming from the depth. We're coming from the intensity, from intimacy, maybe from being the previous what's that word I want to use? Heretics, Scorpio 3rd house is the heretics. And many of us have that past life experience, right? We've gone through that persecution more than once. But what are we doing? We're taking it into business, money, Taurus, stability, security out there in the world, standing up with Uranus, which rules astrology, and saying, yeah, we are unique, we are different, and we have this special amount of information. And yes, we create community, 11th house, that's nurturing, loving, caring. And when OPA has conferences, very different from any other organization, our conferences are held in slightly outside places, places that have nature nearby. Uh, we make them smaller. Our ideal conference is about 80 to 150 people. I love the big conferences too. Put a plug in for UAC 2026 in Chicago, September 2 to 9th, which will have like 1,500 people. That's a whole different experience, right? That's wild. You got 270 lectures. Everything you ever wanted to know and every astrologer you ever heard is speaking. But for OPA to come together and to do something small and intimate, having dinners together, little potluck parties, spending 3 days with one teacher and going on a deep dive for one subject matter, that's what we do. That's what we promote.
Yeah. So I have a couple things I'm going to say. So just on the OPA theme, I went to my first OPA conference last October and I was blown away because I had done a bunch of conferences back in my first iteration of being an astrologer many years ago. And I did not feel that sense of belonging. I actually felt kind of, the feeling that's not uncommon to me, which is like I'm in a group of people and I feel lonely. like there's like I'm in lots of different rooms with lots of different peoples and people, and I feel alone. And I didn't have that same feeling at OPA. And so I definitely got the sense that there was a welcoming feeling. And I think that Cancerian, I'm a four planets in Cancer. So the Cancer in the 11th house, I think definitely really resonated with me. And so right away I was like, well, I want to be a peer group leader. And, that's part of the, OPA you can get certified through OPA, and that there's a process. And so go to the OPA website, Organization for Professional Astrology. And you can check it all out, and you can check out the conference. But I had a really good experience. And so I'm coming back again this year, and I'm not a presenter. I am just going to be taking a peer group, because I think that the way that they want to help people make sure that they are in their integrity and they're giving, I really love coaching other astrologers to help them really give a reading that's meaningful. So many times I get people that come to me that had bad readings and they were given toxic information. And or they don't even know what their astrologer just said to them, because they were talking about the quincunx of the blah, 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 and the kazemi. And it's like, I'm not an astrologer. I just want you to help provide me some guidance and support and inspiration. And I think that that's ultimately our job, is, to your point, the soul path. We're helping people get on their soul path. We're illuminating the way. So I assume you did not watch my video because you have 5,000 things going on, but my video about being an outsider really was illustrating about the Uranian and Aquarian signatures. So you just kind of validated, the whole kind of thesis of that video. And I have no Aquarius in my chart either, but I have Uranus right on the midheaven, like to the degree. And so everybody, that watched that video commented. And it was so startling how many people had really powerful Aquarian or Uranian signatures that could identify with that feeling of being an outsider. I also got a lot of comments about Virgo, which I thought was really interesting. And I think there is something very much in common. Virgo sees the ideal much the way Aquarius does. Like, there is something visionary about Virgo as well. It's a less big picture and it's more granular, And so I think that there's a lot of people often misunderstand Virgo energy.
Mhm.
And I think also Virgos, they're so self-critical, and people don't understand the Virgo love language, which is when you maybe criticize somebody else, or like they perceive it as a criticism, it's really part of your love language, which is like service and help, because you
Mhm.
can see the ideal. So that was a part of my video that I did not talk about Virgo energy, but that was something that was like in the comments over and over again. So I wanted to throw that in. So I think that if you are looking for a community, please do check out OPA. I have found a little bit of a home there. I'm hosting the Mercury Hour once a month. And so there's just a lot of opportunities. And Celeste Brooks, who comes on here often, she hosts a transit talk. And there's just a lot of opportunities to learn. So, okay, so you brought up the fact that Pluto is in Aquarius. It hit 3 degrees, but now it's stationary retrograde. Talk about what your thoughts are there.
Mhm. Well, when we just break it down, we think about Pluto as the planetary energy that is all about transforming deep wounds that are karmic in their base nature, transforming them into power, integrity, and honesty. And those wounds are steeped within us and within our society. On a personal level, we feel Pluto when we're feeling this deep sense of rage, pain, shame, fear, and uh, often despair, hopelessness, like really the hardest possible feelings we can have are embedded in our Pluto signature and come from the full integration or experience of many, many karmic lives that if we work with the Pluto signature, if we face those fears, if we feel those feelings, and we transform into a sense of power, then we're lining up with our destiny. And each one of us has a Pluto that is in alignment with the generation. So the generations that the sociologists talk about will be a little different than astrology generations. They miss some of the points. They overlap a lot because we
Yeah.
know that Pluto goes back and forth, and sometimes they don't quite get it, and they totally miss out the little hipsters from who have Pluto in Libra. They've forgotten about them. So they put them either as millennials or Gen X. But if you know where your Pluto is, you know the quality that you are working on, and you know the placement in your chart that this is the area of life that you are meant to confront those demons, confront that unconscious energy. So when Pluto goes into another sign, right? Different sign than where you were born. It is working with that material. Like right now, it's working with Aquarius. So it's working on the issues of authenticity, freedom, awakening, the revolution, internal revolution, external revolution. The microcosm of our personal lives is part of the macrocosm of the world and the larger state of humanity. And as we work on that Aquarian energy and find our own place of community and tribe and authenticity, basically we send a message back to our natal Pluto that takes us more deeply into our true destiny purpose in alignment with our generation. One of the things that's really interesting to look at is the aspect that Pluto in Aquarius makes with all of the Pluto generations. So, for instance, baby boomers, of which I am, we're all coming into our Pluto opposite Pluto, which is an aspect of completion, of fullness, of saying, okay, I've done what I was here to do, I've arrived. Whereas millennials are coming into Pluto square Pluto, which is a tension about, oh, I must do this thing that I'm being drawn to. And there's a challenge to what feels comfortable and what we're afraid of, but it pulls us in. So millennials are coming into their power years, and each other generation has its own aspect to contend with. But yeah, with retrograde, we cover the steps. Actually, when Pluto went retrograde on the 4th Sunday, it was almost at 4 degrees, and it's going back to 1. So it tends to go, up 4, back 3, up 4, back 3. And if you have a few planets that it's aspecting, you're in for a long process and settling in and digging in and noticing what you're afraid of and what you don't want to look at. That's what Pluto is asking you to look at.
So, and I did a reading for someone yesterday. She had 0 Aquarius, and the Pluto, and a lot of what she had experienced had taken place prior to that Pluto hitting that 0 Aquarius spot. And, it won't be going all the way back to an exact conjunction. For those who are more beginner astrology, I kind of want to just sort of talk a little bit about Pluto transits, because Pluto transits they are the most life transforming transits that we do experience. The faster moving planets, there's the day to day, like the moon influences our emotions, and like Venus can, bring someone new into our lives. But it's still kind of this faster moving energy. And you get to the outer planets like like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. These are the ones that can potentially take, a couple of years to sort of get through. And Pluto is about death and transformation and really shining a spotlight on what isn't working or what needs to be healed within you. So it was one of the things that I found, and I'm curious if this is because you've been doing readings, like exponential number of readings than I've done in my lifetime. because you've just devoted so many years to the practice of it. But what I found in my own life, and for many people that I do readings for, when you get the initial hit, it's a disorienting feeling. Like you are not told, like oftentimes with a Pluto transit, like you don't really understand what you're going to understand in a few years. Like that is kind of the initial, something comes in from the outside, like a breakup or an illness, or, there's something that sort of rocks your world in some way, especially if whatever that is touching has been an area that you have not really processed consciously. And as you get through this back and forth motion, when you're at the second hit of it, let's say, you kind of at least have your bearing. You at least know what's happening. And by the end, there is this sense of like, you can feel the birth of whatever is meant to come. Like you can feel the healing. Like there is this sense of integration. You may not be fully through it yet, but you are definitely well on your way. Like it doesn't kind of knock you off balance like the initial transit. Has that been your
Yes,
experience of Pluto
yes.
as
And
well?
that's a really good point to make, especially to people who haven't been aware they were going through a Pluto transit or are just starting one. It can be very depressing and discouraging if you think you're going to feel this bad the whole number of years. And so it's important to emphasize that there is that first time that it comes into contact. And honestly, I'll say that I feel sensitive people feel an impending transit of Pluto many degrees before many astrologers would say, "Oh, you're going to feel it." Like I've read where people would say, "Oh, you only feel an outer planet transit when it's 2 to 3 degrees away from exact," and that is not my experience. I feel people are pondering the problems and the curriculum, I call it, that they're going to have to deal with in the Pluto transit, maybe as many as, 7, 8, 9, 10 degrees. It's many, many, many years before Pluto gets there. You may have these kind of questioning feelings like, I don't know if I want this forever. I don't know if this is working for me. But then as it gets closer, we start to get the details of it. And yes, when it gets to be 2, 1, 0 exact, then the curriculum is like painted as a mural on the wall of our psyche. and and you know what the problem is, and it feels insurmountable. It feels like there's nothing you can do about it, and your most intense fears are up. And it can, I don't even have a word for it, it can destabilize your life. And there's a tension, right? Where you kind of know what you want, but you can't seem to get there. But as you say, as you're going back and forth, as it moves up and back like a steamroller going over that same place, you start to make sense of it. You start to face the feelings whether you want to or not. And like everything else in astrology, when you are willing to consider the issues deeply, and I feel a lot of times Pluto needs a therapist, an astrologer who does counseling work, a shaman, you need some help unless you've got the most amazing friends, because it can be very hard to handle it by yourself, and having someone guiding you is useful. But as you face the unconscious issues, the shadow, like you'll just realize out of nowhere, oh my God, I always do this. And I had no idea that, this was what was motivating me in this action. It's a lot of apologies that sometimes have to come up to yourself and others when you're doing that Pluto work.
Yeah.
And when you come into the final and it's done, and it even can take 2, 3, 4 years after the transit is done before it's fully integrated because you've changed so much. You come into your power in a way that is unshakable, that you know who you are, you've walked through the fire, you've come out the other side, you've built something that is transformed. And the more Pluto transits you have in your life, the more you embody that kind of soul-centered power. And power gets a bad rap in our world, right? Because a lot of times it's control and manipulation. That's ego power. Pluto power is soul-based power.
That is, it's so very true that a Pluto transit when you're in your 20s hits very differently than a Pluto transit in your 50s, 60s, 70s, because you've come through these other Pluto transits. You've kind of recognized your strength. You've recognized what you can survive. And Pluto is the what doesn't kill you makes you stronger planet. I mean, that really is what it
Mhm.
is. I think we are with all of the shifts of the outer planets, especially when a planet is going, like Pluto, goes into a new sign, there is this sense of disorientation on some level because it's a new energy. So, like, immediately we feel that it moved into a new sign. Like suddenly, that's what I was saying. Like all of a sudden, you started hearing about community. I don't remember hearing about community 3 years ago. I don't remember people talking about getting outside your home or that, that was sort of one of the manifestations. Then you kind of can look to the news too, and you start to see things like the rise of unions, and there are things that like suddenly just come into the more conscious awareness. But on an individual level, you're working with new energy, and the largest generation, the baby boomers, the Pluto and Leo, as you mentioned, this is going to be an interesting time for them because and it will take place over the next couple of decades. It doesn't like happen. It depends on like where you are. You an older Pluto in Leo generation or one of the younger ones, and so but if you are in that older group, you know your early Leo and Pluto and Leo is going to have that opposition. And that opposition is kind of that questioning that, talk a little bit about what you think like would be a healthy way for the baby boomer generation to kind of integrate that opposition.
Mhm. Yeah. When we have any opposition, there's a tendency to hold our position in one planet or one sign, and then have a problem with whoever is the other, right? And that's the projection of oppositions. So baby boomers who are, well known for too much Leo, right? Narcissism is all about me. I'm just gonna, spend all my money and all the resources. That's the negative, baby boomer archetype. Uh, Giving up that kind of power and ego to the collective, to the fact that the world has to change in a way that is sustainable and equitable for all, that's going to be the issue. And I would say, especially the older baby boomers who are well into their 80s at this point in time, this is such a different world that, these are many of the people who are resisting change and, are, in my mind, rightfully criticized by younger people. And then as we get into, like you said, it's going to take a full 20 years to go through the whole process of opposition for baby boomers. But, if I were talking to a baby boomer right now, I would say, let go of how you were imprinted and how you think you're supposed to be special and do what you want to do, and try to see more clearly the new processes that the younger people are bringing in, because it's the younger people who are creating, they're the architects of the world, and it's not our job to stand in their way. It's our job to stand on the sidelines with support. We can be wise elders, we can offer support as asked, but it's not our world anymore. And and it's really the millennials that are coming into their power. Gen Z close behind, Gen X, also, kind of there and
Yeah, also kind of there. That's okay. We never got to do Jack. So thanks everybody. Sorry.
I don't know about that.
It's true. It's like, all right, but Oh, okay. I'm in my 50s. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's right. It's not my world anymore either. I never got my world, but I have a beautiful life. And that's, I chose to incarnate as a Gen Xer, but I had to make fun of that. I'm sorry.
I'm
Even
sorry, no
there.
disrespect to Gen X. I feel Gen X has done a whole lot in this world to create systems and to solve problems and bring technology into the world and aspects of regeneration and all of the toxic systems and problem solving. But I feel like it's been kind of a thankless job, so I can understand the how
And
to.
like with everything, there's your good Gen Xers and your, not so good Gen Xers. So, I, share a generation with someone who makes electric vehicles that I can't stand. So, like
Mm-hmm,
people's soul evolution plays a big role in it. And I'm also seeing a lot of the boomers out at the protests,
mm-hmm,
which is very Pluto and Aquarian. And so that feels like a very supportive because they understand it's about, I want to protest for, future generations. I want to lead the way. That's one of the things that I've been very impressed with. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, and I feel many times we don't get seen for what we did. We were the ones that were breaking through rebelling in the 60s against the system that was in place from Pluto and Cancer. So yeah, this is not new for us. We already fought for women's rights and gay rights and ending the war and, having a more sane system around finances. So yeah, I mean,
And I
it's.
think the healthy, like to your point about guiding, really kind of recognizing that there is this change and you guys have a blueprint, you have a map for it. And so empowering, that is one of the things, the mentorship with younger people, that can be kind of that dichotomy where you don't have to feel like you're not contributing, because I think the boomers are always going to have to feel like this is their world in some way, but like it's a contribution, it's a passing of the baton. I mean, the opposition really is a passing of the baton, quite literally, when you look at it. And
Mhm.
Pluto is now in Aquarius, which is going to be a little bit of a mystery to that generation. Like it's going to be something that, you have to consciously really reach out.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
so now that it's retrograde, I know that a friend of mine texted me, she's like, boy, I'm really feeling this, Pluto retrograde. And oftentimes, especially if you're not tracking this stuff, you don't feel the retrogrades of the outer planets in your personal life directly. But if you are kind of more tuned into it, how do you say that the outer planet retrogrades, like a Pluto retrograde, can manifest in your personal life versus the collective?
Hmm. Well, I'll give an example of it. Pluto coming into Aquarius, it's coming into my 11th house, which is the house of activism, humanitarianism, the tribe, the community, and what your long-term plans are. So I've had it in the area of career for many years, and during those years is when I've risen up in the astrological world and, president and on the board of Kepler College and all of those things. So now it's coming into the 11th house, and it feels like it has more to do with how do I reach the world and not so much about it being my career. My natal Pluto is in the 5th house of creative expression in Leo. So that just says creativity, and creative expression is a really important part for me. So in the last 6 months, while it has been direct and where we have gone through the election and the first 100 days, I have been thinking, what is my role? What is my role? How do I need to respond now? Is there anything I need to do differently? And I was feeling kind of overwhelmed, as Pluto will be, kind of overcome by the intensity of the inner call. And that's where I came through some deep process and channeling to the idea of Substack, that this would be a way for me to write. And so it was actually right, I think, on the day or the day before Saturday was when I posted my first Substack. It was right as it was turning retrograde. I'm like, oh, that's the thing to do. And so I can see where now over these next few months, I'm building up that voice of what do I have based on my own experience and knowledge? What do I have to give to the world, to the community, and get it out there, even though, like many of us, I can be a little nervous about, putting out lots of written things, videos, whatever. I'm sure you've felt that sometimes too, Dabney. It's very vulnerable to put ourselves out in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pluto in the 11th house or anything where you're putting yourself out, like it takes courage, but you're also mirrored back other people's negativity, like there are negative comments or, people misunderstand what you're saying and things like that. And so you have to kind of just go move forward, move through it. And that's a very Plutonian thing too, is you just have to just not care what anyone thinks and you just have to move through it. But it also can be incredibly healing, not just
Mhm.
for others, but for yourself. Like when I do these videos, like, my outsider video and stuff, it's healing for me too, because I'm really like I'm going through this process and recognizing, oh, well, this is what's up for me. This is what I'm thinking about as this is all transpiring.
Mhm.
So, I definitely encourage people to go through and look and see what house Pluto is in for you right now, because it's where you do have a new vision. It's where you're being called and tapped on the shoulder to step up into your power, no matter
Yeah.
what the aspects it's making.
Yes, yes. And think about, from October, it was October 11th that Pluto went direct over those degrees. So think about everything you've been thinking about, concerned about, what feels passionate, what you're afraid of, all of that. And then you've got the whole summer until October 13th to go back and retrace the steps and make some changes, do something differently. And remember, Aquarius is always drawing us to authenticity. Like, what is authentic to you? That's like my mid-range grounding word for Aquarius. It's like, yes, it's also very spiritual. We talk about awakening, enlightenment, freedom. So, that takes us into the deepest levels of Buddhist meditation, where we understand the nature of reality and we can have that equanimity. But authenticity is like kind of an easy question to ask ourselves. If I make this choice or that choice, which is more true to me? Where do I find myself standing in my personal power in a way that makes a difference in the world? And letting go of the Leo, right? Because the sign opposite is always something about the medicine for a sign. So Leo is where we're thinking about our image and what other people expect of us and want us to do. And it's maybe a little bit more on the superficial side. But Pluto in Aquarius is asking us all to participate in creating a new world.
I think we really are just at the tip of that Pluto and Aquarius,
Mhm.
and that's one of the things that before Pluto went into Aquarius, so many of us were seeing it as this sort of savior antidote to the Pluto and Capricorn. And I
Mhm.
know that there's a lot of people out there that, like are the Aquarian age and I do still believe that there is some truth, but we also have to look at it realistically. And that it is we are at the very beginning of what is to come. And I feel like we're still in some ways like cleaning up the Pluto and Capricorn mess, which was very messy.
It's a very big mess. And,
It's a big
the
mess.
patriarchal structure does not let go easily. And I think one of the things we have to remember is that Saturn, which we say rules Capricorn, was the original ruler of Aquarius also. So Saturn is super important, and Saturn is coming into Aries the 24th of this month. And so when you're talking about courage and we need courage, Saturn is coming along slow and steady, and we are coming into a time period where we've got some significant Aries energy brewing. Uh, coming from Neptune and imagination and compassion, Saturn building accomplishment structure, and that's another indication that we are moving into a whole new journey.
Yeah. And I think that the Plutonian lesson of really, when you're going through hell, keep going. There's a little bit of like, I think that we all do need to, find our own inner truth, right? With the Aries, because Aries is about my truth. It is about me. But it's in the context because we have to look at all of the outer planets, and that was a big learning for me over the past year. Is you cannot, especially with mundane astrology, you cannot look at what happened with one specific, like Pluto and Aquarius. Well, yeah, sure, that was the revolution, but there was also Neptune was in Libra. Like it was a very different situation, or there was an
Mhm.
opposition. You have to look at the whole collective piece. And I look at all of this new Aries energy with that Aquarius. It's about finding our individual truth together,
Mhm.
right? So that's kind of
Mhm.
like, and I don't feel like we're completely there yet, but the Saturn in Aries, do you have any kind of, I'm actually somewhat optimistic about the Saturn in Aries for,
Mhm.
I'm calling it like there's a new sheriff in town. But I'm interested in your take on that. Like, do you
Yeah,
kind of have, and obviously we don't have predictions like a crystal ball, but like, do you have, kind of some thoughts about where you think things are going?
yeah. I feel the combination of Neptune and Saturn, both in Aries, and they create a new synodic cycle in February next year. So there's another curriculum that is surrounding us, as well as the Pluto and Aquarius curriculum, and they are aligned in a certain way. Both signs, Aries and Aquarius, like personal freedom and are willing to take risks and want to change things. And having Neptune, which brings in this level of compassion and creative ideas of how we can live. And we've been very much getting those messages since 2011 when it was in Pisces. It's bringing in this, mm, I would say, compassionate, creative, visionary ideas. And Saturn always comes along and says, okay, how will we build it? How will we structure it? And often Saturn will be kind of slow and steady, but in Aries, it's going to move faster. And the courage and bravery, yeah, like a new sheriff in town. There's like the law, the rules of Saturn, but a little bit of a swashbuckler, right? Like one way or another, we're going to get it done. Uh, I feel like we'll start to see some stuck problems in areas moving a little bit faster. And and we don't have time to lose, honestly. We need to make the changes that are necessary to create a more sustainable world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been really interesting. Do you have any other final comments or I mean, this is kind of been a little bit of an interesting, like we're looking at Pluto, we're looking a little bit at the Saturn, but I think that there's a lot to take away from this time as we're just kind of getting our footing with Pluto and Aquarius and knowing how important it's going to be.
Yeah, yeah. No, I feel like this is good for the astrology that we're talking about today. Those are the main things. We also have Uranus this year moving into Gemini for a moment, and that will be another important and I think positive aspect because Pluto and Uranus joined together in Virgo in the mid 60s. That's a big part of Gen X. And coming into trine with each other is a blossoming of a lot of those new ideas that started then. So I think we can be pretty hopeless sometimes when we're hearing the news and the difficulties throughout the world. But in my mind, all these planetary changes, even though it's challenging to go through this much deconstruction, this much loss, we are headed, I believe, in a better direction.
I think
Yeah.
that's really, I feel like a renewed sense of optimism from astrologers, psychics, everyone since Pluto went into Aries. It was kind of like an overnight, like people started to see like where we actually could go versus just this
Mhm.
kind of helpless victimy confusion, which is, kind of the end, right? Like that's the end. And now it's like a new beginning. And so we just have to embrace it. So, well,
Yeah.
if you are looking for a community, Kay has a community. There is OPA, which we talked about. There's so many astrologers out there that have communities. So if you are astrologically inclined, with all this Aries energy, find out who you are authentically, but don't go it alone, right?
Don't
Like,
go it alone. Yeah, and I want to mention the retreat again and say that, the OPA certification process is available at the retreat with peer groups, astronomy, and consulting skills. And also 4 incredible track leaders will be offering 3-day deep intensive workshops. And we have Rick Levine, Lynn Bell coming from France, Celeste Brooks, and also Rachel Lang, who is going to be doing a 3-day track on mundane astrology. So yeah, we've got a
I
great line.
love Rachel. She's
Uh-huh.
amazing. And obviously I'm friends with Celeste. So I adore her as well. So, and who wouldn't want to learn from Rick Levine? So, or Lynn Bell. So
Yeah.
definitely check it out. And if you go, I'll be there. So you can say in the
I'm
comments and we'll have to like grab a tea or something like that.
Yeah, I'll be there. Definitely leading a peer group for that week. It's 15th to the 19th of October in beautiful Park City, Utah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, it's a really nice hotel that they picked and it's walking
mhm.
distance to
Hot
where.
tubs, pools, walking trails. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, when we're talking about community and living a more Aquarian life. This is one of the ways that we can be with each other and maybe not feel so much of an outsider.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's it. It's like
Mhm.
find the thing that, people that validate you, people that lift you up. Life is way too short to be around people that just don't get you. And we are all out there. And I realized that I think I got more comments on that post. The engagement with it was not as high as some of my other videos, but like, or as far as like people clicking through, but like the number of people that commented were like, me too, I feel that way. So
Oh, I can't wait to see it. I didn't know about that. So yeah, I'll
yeah, but I
check it
mean,
out too.
it's stuff you already know. But yeah, if you feel called to it. So, well, thank you everybody. And as always, the universe is conspiring to help us. And there is a reason and a season for it all. Please subscribe to Kay's Substack. Check out all of, the OPA things. I have a course right now that I'm going to put the link below. So everything is in the course description and everything's in the show notes. So please do check that out. And I hope you have a lovely, lovely week. Bye-bye.
Bye.